Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Tuesday night. It is the Earthmaster out here, April 9th, 2024. It is about 10:22 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D Globe shows a 1.7 earthquake in the Alaska area, and also a 3.2 out here somewhere in the mix. I want to chat about here the San Andreas Fault, though, right off the bat. We're looking at pretty quiet conditions out here right now. Only one earthquake here in the last 24 hours that shows a 1.5. Just off the creeping segment there of the San Andreas Fault. And if you know me, we keep an eye here on the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. I want to show you guys here the last 30 days of all magnitudes, and look at this little cluster out here. This is a plate boundary itself between two major plates. That's a Pacific plate here to the west, and of course the North American plate here to the east. Now, the creeping segment is quite active here in terms of seeing a lot of earthquake activity here in terms of smaller magnitude quakes. There was a recent article put out here, in fact, just in the last day here from the livescience.com site, talking about the area of the San Andreas Fault might be overdue here for an earthquake. The creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault here seems to rupture about every 22 years, with the last rupture being back in 2024. So it's getting close, right? 2024. This is just the regular occurrence interval here of a large earthquake. And it looks as though, these guys think that maybe a earthquake around the 6.0 magnitude earthquake should be coming up here within this region of the San Andreas Fault here soon. Roughly about a 6-pointer. So every 22 years or so, it's been timed, almost like clockwork out here. They claim, though, that this area will probably see something very soon here. Not a huge earthquake, but these 6-pointers do occur on occasion out here. It's an interesting article out here because they basically think that something's going to happen this year. If you look at this article and you read it thoroughly, this person here, Malagini, I think that's how it's pronounced, said there is not any evidence of the attenuation of measurement that preceded the 2004 quake, but he suspects that the next quake will hit Parkfield this year. But it may not be in the same place as back in 2004, but it will be within the same plate boundary. So let's look at the activity back in 2004. So that 6-pointer is that what he's talking about right here is along the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. So basically here northward is where we see irregular intervals of earthquakes every 22 years or so. This earthquake back here was a 7.9 earthquake back in 1857. That is the cutoff area between the creeping segment and the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault. That was a big earthquake, right? Obviously some time ago. But we're talking about these regular intervals of earthquakes that take place. The last one back in 2004. Prior to that, we had 1986. Let's see here. There's one of these quakes out here from the 80s. If we're looking at every 20 years or so, every 22 years or so. Let's see, when was this one? 1901. There's been a lot of earthquakes out here. It's hard to keep track of every single one out here, but it seems as though these guys, the professionals, have a method of watching these earthquakes every 22 years. And if we think about it, the last earthquake in 2004, that's 20 years ago. So technically we should be looking at some movement out here fairly soon. If we look at the last 30 days of earthquake activity, we have seen an increase in earthquake activity out here across this segment of the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. So things may be on a telltale event taking place right now. We'll have to watch that. A 6-pointer out here will definitely shake things up, but it's not around a huge populated area. Say if we get a 6-pointer directly underneath San Francisco or Oakland area, this out here around the Parkfield area. In fact, I was just out here a couple years ago looking at the plate boundaries. Pretty neat to see the effects that the plate boundary creates out here. Differences and whatnot across roads and structures and bridges. You can see the offset that takes place out here across the plate boundary. But I thought it was an interesting article out here. I will share this with you guys on the in the description below. So check it out if you get a chance. Obviously, a 6-pointer out here, kind of a big deal, but nothing compared to some of the big quakes that are potentially going to happen out here across the California area. For a major plate boundary, we have been fairly quiet out here. I want to go back here and look at the earthquake catalog. I want to go 6.5 and above. All right. In the last 24 years. And we're going to draw a rectangle out here on the map and check out just California in general, okay? If you guys remember, of course, we did see a 6-pointer and a 7-pointer down in Southern California back in 2019. Remember the July 4th, July 5th sequence of earthquakes. So it looks like I put in 6.5, right? So it looks like that 6-pointer that took place down here was smaller than a 6.5. Can't remember the exact magnitude, but a day later we've seen that 7.1 strike out here. So that's inland. That's away from the plate boundary. Activity up here in Northern California away from the plate boundary. Look at the plate boundary itself, where you expect the most activity to take place out here. Nothing, nada, zero. So obviously there is strain out here against the plate boundary of the North American and the Pacific plate. That's where we tend to see the large earthquakes take place. And all these quakes out here in the last 24 years, well away from the plate boundary. So it's just a matter of time here before we see some larger scale potential out here. 6.5, well off the, well, that was inland here. That was off the plate boundary, though, into the coast range here back in 2003. So these earthquakes occur because of the stress related out here against the plate boundary, but nothing out here for 6.5 and above in the last 20-something years. So it's just a matter of time, folks, before we see some larger scale potential out here. And when it comes, it's going to come with a bang, no doubt. So I figured I'd share that article with you guys. I'll leave that out there in the description video or description below. So what do we have going on for right now? Fairly quiet conditions out here across the plate boundary. For a major plate boundary, it's awfully quiet. It's almost like having neighbors out there that are, the crazy type. And it's Saturday night, Friday night, nothing going on. They're pretty quiet. Something's going on. Is this a calm before the storm, so to speak? San Andreas Fault, pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on out there right now. If you look into the Pacific Northwest, roughly about the same. Nothing major going on out here across the country. Here's the latest activity out there across the New Jersey area. A handful of earthquakes today. The latest one shows a 1.4 earthquake. That brings the total tally up to about 47? 48. There we go. 48 earthquakes out here across the New Jersey area, following that 4.8 earthquake earlier a few days ago on the 5th. But looks like things are settling in here for now. A broad view of the planet out here shows, well, obviously some earthquake activity out here in the Indonesia Islands area. A couple of smaller aftershocks following that 6.6 this morning as well. A look at the earthquake 3D globe shows fairly stable conditions out here in terms of just typical earthquake activity. Really not seeing anything major going on. Some threes out here across New Zealand. A little bit of activity stirring up here across the northern segment of the Pacific Plate. That's the Alaska area. They did see a 4.9 here earlier this evening. About 35 kilometers deep here across this area of the subduction zone. But aside from that, there's really not a whole lot of major earthquake activity taking place out here. Some movement across the Mediterranean, the Atlantic Ocean, awfully quiet. Very typical activity across the Peru-Chile Trench and the Middle America Trench for now. Hawaii out there in the middle of it all shows fairly calm conditions. We got about 14 earthquakes out here. Really nothing major. Handful of earthquakes there in the deeper regions underneath the Big Island. 2.3, about 32 kilometers deep. These are normally associated with the weight of the Pacific Island out here, or the Hawaii Island on the Pacific Plate. That does add a little strain out here across this plate boundary in general, or a plate in general, not a plate boundary. But as you can see, Hawaii out there has been trying to keep its head above waters for many, many, many years out there. But eventually, Mother Nature takes over and diminishes the head over water features out here. But for now, enjoy it. A little earthquake out there across the southern area of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It looks like a 1.4, but really nothing major going on. It's just one of those times here where I feel it's very important to watch the San Andreas Fault. I'm just getting a little hunch here that things are about ready to pop out here across this area of the West Coast. Keep an eye on it, folks. Just when you get that feeling out there, you kind of have to say something about it. Otherwise, it eats you up inside, and I don't want that to happen. Definitely keep an eye on the San Andreas Fault here across the West Coast for now. Space weather activity, we are continuing down into the B flare category. B stands for what? Boring, I think. That's the best thing I can describe is the boring class, flare class out here. Really not a whole lot of activity stirring up out here. We do have some prominence features out here facing the Earth, but they are fairly stable. Not noticing anything that's blasting off there from the Earth-facing side of the sun. A couple different sunspots out here, but relatively stable amongst those sunspots with a 40% chance of a C flare. M flare, I don't know why it's up there at 10%, but that's what it is. X flare around 1% or so. That's going to be 0.01%. Interesting, 0.01. All right. Far side of the sun, if we look here at the model, this is going to be it right here. I'm kind of keeping my eye on 3615, an older sunspot here that was the culprit of many M flares here recently. When it was over here across the Earth-facing side of the sun. Now it's way over there on the far side of the sun, but getting ready here in a few days or so to return to the Earth-facing side of the sun. It's a ginormous sunspot. Look at that. That's a very beautiful feature, and I think we got to watch that as it comes back around the bend here. But for now, enjoy these calm conditions out here across the Earth-facing side of the sun. Not a whole lot going on there. All right, Storm Prediction Center. We got some big-time severe weather tomorrow, folks. Don't let this fool you. I see a lot of people out there claiming that the Storm Prediction Center out here has been getting a lot of stuff wrong, and that basically they're calling for wrong forecasts. I don't I do not hold these guys responsible for the lack of activity. These guys are subject to putting out their best information that they get out here in terms of weather models and advising the public what to expect for severe weather potential. And they're doing their job out here. I do not like to knock on the Storm Prediction Center, but I've seen a few folks out here talking about how these guys claim that they're putting out a tornado watch and no tornado happens. Well, that's a good thing, right? I'm not going to say that's, I'm not going to knock these guys for it. So for tomorrow, for Wednesday, we're looking at a 15% area and a hatched area here for tornado potential. This is kind of a big deal. Do not ignore this tomorrow. Tomorrow is basically for some of you guys out there, but this is for Wednesday. Areas included: Baton Rouge, Jackson, Mississippi. These areas up here in the hatched area: New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Mobile, Jackson. Heads up. This is the area out here that holds the highest potential of seeing all the ingredients to make a tornado outbreak out here across this area tomorrow. So please be weather aware. It's very important that you guys keep a weather radio out here across Louisiana, again, Mississippi, and the portions of Alabama as well. Florida's included in some of that there across the Panhandle. So it's a big deal. Do not ignore this threat tomorrow. And this is the latest forecast here from the Storm Prediction Center. Wind, big time wind as well. But I'd rather have a 65 mile per hour straight line wind instead of an EF5 tornado on my property. Hail, not that big of a threat, but there is a potential out there tomorrow. Wednesday holds a huge threat here for tornado activity. Don't get complacent for the forecast here tomorrow. A lot of people claim that, well, they issued a tornado watch out here today, but nothing happened. So that means tomorrow nothing's going to happen as well. Don't get complacent like that. I don't like it when people, shrub this off as not a big deal. This is a big deal out here for this area tomorrow. So I want to see the least possible damage out here in terms of loss of life. I don't like seeing the damage out here when people tend to ignore the weather. It's a big deal. Life can change in a blink of an eye out here in terms of the severe weather and the potentials that that these tornadoes can produce out here. It's wise to be present, right? It's wise to be aware of what's going on up in the sky above you. All right, let's check out the numerical models. There's some of that forecasting activity here for, this is right now, it looks like. So as we head into this tomorrow, that low pressure system is going to stir up that tornado potential out here. Look at that. Whole lot of rainfall, whole lot of potential rain, and a rotating systems out here. They definitely going to see a lot of potential tornado activity out there tomorrow. California, West Coast, we do have a decent low pressure system headed towards this weekend. Looks like some rain and snow. Rain across Southern California as well. That's going to stir up some potential severe weather out in the Southern Plains once again as we head into early next week. Got to remember, everything that takes place out here across the West Coast ultimately affects areas out here across the rest of the country. As we head into late next weekend, there's a series of systems here. It's getting quite serious here in terms of the severe potential out here. Got a lot of colder air dipping down potentially, a lot of warmer air interacting out here. And that makes for, ultimately that makes for the severe potential. This is towards the April, let me start over here, okay? This is the April 9th time period, roughly about there. California going to cook for a little bit. it hit 80 degrees out here in Northern California. Beautiful. I started my garden. Hopefully I didn't jinx it, but I started my garden out there. Going to grow some watermelons, cantaloupe for the kids, and some pumpkins and whatnots, maybe some sunflowers as well. Perfect time for germination there. And so we have that high pressure system out here. Going to be 83, I think, tomorrow, and 85 on Thursday. But then things start to cool down. Look at this cold pressure, low pressure system there. That's a cutoff low, bringing in the rainfall and colder temperatures there to California. Areas across southern plains going to cook for a little bit, but once that low pressure interacts there, we'll see some severe potential out here across this area. Long-term models here does show West Coast high pressure ridging going on, and that's okay with me. I've had a decent winter out here. We've had lots of precipitation, and I'm okay with the warmer weather out here. Unsettled conditions. This mix and match here of hotter and colder temperatures there spell some trouble there for some severe weather as we head towards the middle and end of April. So it's that time frame, right? Severe weather potential out here, and it's best to be prepared out here for this type of weather. We can be safe. We can beat it. Just got to make sure you guys are aware of what's going on in terms of that severe potential. So here's the last 24 hours of earthquake activity, folks. 200 earthquakes of 200 earthquakes on the map here. We'll continue to watch activity. Check out this article. It's definitely worth the read. I'll leave this in the description video here of this update video. All right. Have a good night, folks. Stay safe. We'll catch you guys back out here for the Wednesday update here after a few hours of sleep. Take care, folks.